She sold it like it meant nothing, like it was just wood and keys and wires. Not the only thing that ever listened when I cried. The piano wasn't expensive, not by collector standards, but it was mine. A gift from my father before he died. My fingers had memorized every chipped ivory tooth, every note slightly off, every breath the pedals made when pressed too hard. It wasn't just an instrument, it was the only thing in that house that belonged to me. And I came home one afternoon to find the corner of my room empty, the dust outline of its legs the only thing left behind. "Where's my piano?" I remember asking, panic already tightening my chest. Donna didn't even look up from her phone. "I sold it. Joan needed money for nationals. Do you know how expensive gymnastic coaches are?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. It didn't compute. She didn't ask. She didn't warn me. She didn't care that I had a conservatory audition coming up, that I'd been practicing 6 hours a day, that the piano wasn't hers to give away. "She's your sister," she said. Like that explained everything. Be supportive. But Joan had always been the favored one, the perfect one, the one who brought home gold medals and magazine clippings, while I brought home calloused fingers and forgotten trophies from underfunded recitals. I didn't ask to be compared, but Donna always did the math for me, and I always came up short. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of her. I just stood there in the hollow quiet of that room, the silence louder than any crescendo I'd ever played. She thought she'd silenced me, but she didn't know I'd memorized every note. She didn't know I'd find a way to play again, even if it killed me. And the next time she saw me touch those keys, it wouldn't be in that cramped bedroom. It'd be on stage, under lights, before a crowd that came for me, not Joan. And when the first note rang out from the grand piano under my fingers, I'd make sure she was in the front row, watching what she tried to erase. Louis had always been quiet. Not in the shy, invisible way, but in the kind of way that made people nervous. He felt things deeper than he ever let on, like he was storing every slight, every silence, every second-hand glance in some invisible drawer inside his chest. And Donna never once asked what he kept in there. She never asked what it cost him to be her son. She was the kind of mother who smiled wider when strangers complimented Joan, who posted competition photos on every wall like shrines, who introduced herself as Joan's mom with more pride than she ever used with his name. Louis? He was just the other one. The boy who liked music. The boy who didn't win medals. The boy who, according to Donna, needed to toughen up. He used to think it was his fault, that maybe if he played louder, practiced harder, filled the weight. House with better music. She'd notice him. He played through sprained fingers, migraines, even once with a fever so high he hallucinated the keys melting into water. And still, every praise he earned came secondhand, delivered by a teacher or a neighbor, not her. Louis remembered the last time she hugged him, his 6th grade recital. He played Debussy, nervous but proud, and after he took his bow, he looked into the audience and saw her clapping. But only because Joan had nudged her. She stood afterward, gave him a side hug, and said, "That was nice. Now let's hurry. Joan's meet starts in an hour." That was the last time her arms were around him. Joan wasn't cruel, not intentionally, but she didn't have to be. Her existence was enough. Everything Louis lacked, Joan overflowed with. Energy, charm, athleticism, approval. She walked into rooms and people noticed. Louis walked into rooms and people remembered they needed to be somewhere else. Still, he didn't hate her. That was the most painful part. He loved her, like a brother's heart was built to. He went to her meets. He cheered. He recorded videos and even helped her stretch before practices. But love didn't erase the feeling of standing in a room that used to have a piano and realizing your mother thought your future was worth less than a plane ticket and a leotard. The day after she sold the piano, Donna didn't apologize. She left a protein bar and a bottle of water on the kitchen counter and a post-it that said, "Be a team player." Like losing the only thing tethering him to himself was just part of growing up. So Louis didn't talk. He didn't argue. He didn't scream. Instead, he walked to the local church 2 blocks away, the one with peeling paint and a crooked steeple. He knocked on the door until the janitor, an old man named Pete, answered with wary eyes and a mop in his hand. "I heard—" "There's a piano here," Louis said, his voice even. Pete grunted. "It's half broken." Louis nodded. "That's fine. So am I." Pete squinted at him for a long minute. "You're that boy, the one from Donna's house." Louis just looked at the floor. Pete stepped aside. The church piano was old and yellowed with time. 3 keys were stuck. One was missing altogether. But it made noise. It responded. Louis sat on the bench, let his fingers fall over the keys, and felt his heart stutter as the first broken chord echoed through the empty pews. It wasn't beautiful, but it was his again. Not Donna's to sell, not Joan's to overshadow. He practiced there every day after school. Pete never asked questions. Sometimes he'd leave the side door unlocked. Sometimes he'd just be sweeping quietly in the back while Louis played Chopin or Liszt, or whatever piece his soul needed to bleed that day. On Sundays, the choir director noticed him. By the 3rd week, she asked him to play for service. Louis agreed, even though his hands shook the first time the congregation stood around him. It was the first time he received a standing ovation. But he didn't tell Donna. He didn't tell anyone. Some things were too sacred to be shared with people who hadn't earned them. He saved every coin the choir director gave him, skipped lunch to buy a used keyboard off a pawn shop wall, and kept it hidden under his bed. It wasn't the same, but it helped him prepare, helped him believe. The conservatory audition date never changed. What changed was the version of himself he brought to it. Donna thought he'd given up. She stopped mentioning music at all. She stopped pretending to care. Joan went off to nationals. Louis went off to the city. He didn't tell anyone about the audition. He took the bus alone. Carried his battered sheet music in a folder duct-taped along the spine. Waited for hours until his name was called. The panel was cold-eyed, meticulous, and unimpressed until he played. Until he poured every rejection, every dusty room, every lonely night with his fingers into the piano they placed before him. When he stood, they didn't clap. But one judge smiled. He got in. Louis waited 3 days before telling her. Not because he needed her permission, just because some part of him still hoped she'd smile. She didn't. He'd left the acceptance letter on the kitchen table right beside her coffee mug and the mail she never checked. It was impossible to miss. The logo from the conservatory was embossed in gold. The envelope still held its weight, but when he got home that night, it was gone, replaced with another post-it. Joan's regional qualifiers next week. You're coming. He walked into her room. She was folding laundry, humming under her breath. She didn't look up. Did you see the letter? She didn't pause. Yes. Silence stretched between them. She folded a sweatshirt, Joan's, team logo bold across the front, then finally met his eyes. That school's expensive, Louis. He blinked. I got a scholarship. There's still housing, transportation, books. You think scholarships cover your meals? I'll figure it out. She gave a tight laugh, bitter and flat. Like you figured out how to help with rent this summer? I've been working double shifts at the bookstore. And spending your free time at that church instead of looking for something better. He stepped back slightly, as if hit. So you did notice I was playing. I noticed you wasting time. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no room for logic in this conversation. Only Joan's shadow. She's going to the state finals. She might get recruited. Real money, full ride. You think piano will feed you in 10 years? I think it might save me now. Donna looked at him like he'd spoken another language, then coldly. Grow up, Louis. Real life isn't about dreams. It's about what's possible. He left the room. That night, he played until his fingers cramped. Not at the church, not on the pawn shop keyboard. In his head. In silence. Repeating every phrase of his audition piece like a prayer he refused to let die. The conservatory gave him a start date. He moved out 2 weeks later. She didn't help pack. She didn't call to check in. She didn't attend orientation. Joan did. She sent a photo of her gold medal from Colorado. Donna posted it on every platform within hours. Louis's own post about his scholarship got 2 likes. Neither from her. Still he played. Every day, every note. He kept his head down. He studied harder than anyone else. He cleaned practice rooms to afford groceries. He learned to live on ramen and determination. Professors noticed. Fellow students started asking him for help. He gave it, quietly, without expecting anything in return. The conservatory held solo recitals once a year, reserved for the top-ranked performer of each class. This year, it was Lewis. The flyer had his name in bold print. He stared at it for 5 minutes before sending a message to Donna with the attached photo. Just the date, the time, the location. She didn't respond. He didn't expect her to. What he didn't expect was Joan. 3. Days before the concert, his phone buzzed with a number he hadn't saved. Her voice was breathless. Lewis. Hey, it's me. He said nothing for a second. I heard about your recital. That's... wow. I didn't know you were still playing. I never stopped. Another pause. Mom wants to come. He blinked. Really? Yeah, she's been weird lately. Quiet. Said she was thinking about how things used to be. She asked if I thought you'd mind. Why would I mind? Lewis said flatly. She only sold the one thing that mattered to me. Joan didn't defend her. That surprised him. Instead, she said, she kept the receipt. What? For the piano. I found it in her drawer last week. Lewis's heart thudded. She never sold anything else of yours. Not even your sheet music. I think she thought you were coming back. I wasn't. I know. Silence again. We'll be there, she said. If that's okay. He didn't answer, but he didn't say no. The night of the recital, the auditorium filled slowly. Lights dimmed. Programs were handed out. His name was printed in black ink on every seat. Soloist, Louis Hart. He peeked once through the side curtain. Row 3, aisle. Seat, Donna. Hair done, lipstick perfect, hands in her lap. Next to her, Joan. Nervous, watching the stage like it held answers. And Lewis stood behind the curtain, heart pounding in his throat. He hadn't played in front of her since middle school, since she stood beside him and told him that was nice and rushed off to Joan's meet. Now she'd hear the whole story. Every chord, every silence, every grief she never saw. He walked out under the lights, sat at the grand piano, and began to play. He had rehearsed the piece 100 times, maybe more. Every measure was muscle memory. Every rest had a breath behind it. But now, sitting under the soft stage light, Lewis's hands trembled above the keys. The auditorium was silent, the kind of silence that weighed down on your spine and made your skin forget how to breathe. But what terrified him most wasn't the crowd, or the professors, or even the possibility of making a mistake. It was her. Sitting in the 3rd row. He could feel her there, more than see her. That practiced posture. That cool, unreadable face. For years, he would have done anything to see that face watching him with pride. Now he wasn't sure if he even wanted her eyes on him. Because if she saw him now, really saw him, she'd see the version of him that no longer needed her. And somehow, that hurt more than all the years she pretended he didn't matter. He exhaled once, then played the first note. It was soft, deliberate. A single tone that lingered in the air before the next one followed. He'd written this arrangement himself, built from fragments of everything he'd ever felt but couldn't say. And now, those feelings poured through the keys. Each chord was a memory. Each crescendo, a cry he never voiced. The middle passage, slow, haunting, was the moment he walked into his room and found the piano gone. He played it gently, but the pain pulsed beneath the melody. His fingers knew exactly how to break. His mind flickered back to nights he'd practiced until dawn. To the dusty church pews, To Pete unlocking the side door without a word, to ramen dinners and frozen hands, to walking past music stores with eyes down because he couldn't afford to even look. All of that bled into the music. He didn't need lyrics. The piano told it all. He reached the difficult part, the bridge, the one with cascading arpeggios that had once made his wrist ache in tears. He didn't hesitate. His fingers flew. Because this was the sound of his heart when it refused to break. The sound of defiance, of survival, of being sold off. Like furniture and still finding a way back. And still, he wondered, was she listening? Not just hearing the notes, but listening? Did she understand what she'd done to him? He didn't dare look up. Not yet. The final passage crept in. Soft. Aching, the goodbye. The letting go. Louis felt the tears burning behind his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. He wasn't going to cry in front of her. Not now. Not after all of it. As the last note rang out, tender, fragile, final, he held it just long enough for the silence to settle in again. Then he lifted his hands, and only then did he look. Donna wasn't clapping. Her hands were frozen in place. Her face was pale, lips parted. And her eyes, they shimmered. Louis blinked once, then stood. He gave a short, quiet bow. The room erupted. Around him, cheers, whistles, a standing ovation. But none of it felt real, because all he could see was her, his mother. The woman who had once decided that his dream was expendable. She was crying, and Louis didn't know if it was guilt or pride. He left the stage before he could find out. Backstage, he gripped the edge of the curtain, trying to breathe. The adrenaline buzzed through his hands, but underneath it, something deeper tugged at him. A quiet ache. Not for the performance, but for what might come next. Would she come back here? Would she say anything at all? He thought of the post-its, the way she used to leave him notes instead of affection. Cold, clipped messages that told him to be quiet, to be useful, to be less. And still, some part of him, small, foolish, stubborn, wanted her to walk through that door and say something that would make it all make sense. 10 minutes passed. Students congratulated him. His professor shook his hand, told him he had something rare, but the door didn't open. Joan came in, eyes red. She hugged him tighter than she ever had. She cried through the whole thing, she whispered. You broke her, Louis. Didn't answer. Joan stepped back. She wanted me to tell you she was proud. He nodded, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The next day, Louis received a message. It wasn't from Donna. It was from the buyer. Hello, this is Marcus Reynolds. I purchased a piano from your mother a while back. I believe it may have sentimental value to you. Would you be open to meeting? Louis stared at the message for a long time. He hadn't thought about where the piano went. He'd assumed it was gone, lost in someone's dusty parlor or buried in a warehouse, forgotten like the boy who used to play it. But now, suddenly, it had a name, a location, a possible way back. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened the music folder in his phone and played the recording of his recital. The final note echoed in his ears like a question that hadn't yet been answered. That evening, he met Marcus at a private studio uptown. A narrow room filled with instruments and dust motes, soft light filtering through stained glass windows. In the corner sat the piano. His piano, scratches still visible on the side panel. A sticker he'd once placed at the corner of the keys still clung there, faded but intact. It still plays, Marcus said gently. Not perfectly, but it's got soul. Louis didn't speak. He walked toward it slowly, like he was approaching a ghost. Then he sat. His fingers hovered over the keys for a second, then touched down. The sound wasn't clean. The middle C was still a little flat, but the moment his fingers pressed the keys, something inside him cracked open. He played without thinking, without planning. Just a quiet melody. Something raw and unfinished. Something that sounded like the boy who used to believe love could be earned. When he stopped, Marcus looked at him carefully. Your mother didn't want to sell it, Lewis blinked. She listed it herself. She did. But the day I picked it up, she stood at the doorway for 20 minutes, said it wasn't hers to give. Said she had a son who might come back one day, but she couldn't wait anymore. Louis sat back. The air in the room shifted. She told me if I ever heard your name again, especially if it was in music, I should give you a chance to buy it back. He didn't know what to say. His throat tightened. Marcus smiled. It's yours. I don't want the money. I just wanted to hear you play it again. Lewis left with the piano scheduled to be delivered the next morning. He walked through the city in silence, emotions tangling in his chest like wires. She hadn't come backstage. She hadn't said the words, but she'd held on to something. Back at his apartment, he found an envelope slipped under the door, his name written in Donna's handwriting. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photo, him at 6 years old, sitting at that very piano, looking up at her with a smile. That hoped for everything. And on the back, in faded pen, you made the house feel like music. There was more written beneath it. I didn't know how to be your mother. I only knew how to be Jones. But I kept every sound you made. Every echo. Every mistake. I hear it all now. I'm sorry I ever turned the volume down on you. Louis folded the photo, held it to his chest, and let the quiet fill the room again. But this time, it didn't hurt. It hummed like something being tuned back into place. The piano arrived at sunrise. Louis opened the door in silence as the movers brought it in, careful with each step like they could feel the weight it carried wasn't just physical. The studio corner had already been cleared. He hadn't slept all night. His mind had looped between that message, the photo, and the echo of Donna's words written in ink that looked like it had been pressed down hard. He watched the piano settle into its new home. Same worn wood. Same uneven leg. Same middle C that always dipped just slightly under pressure. He didn't touch it right away. He sat across from it, knees drawn to his chest on the old window seat, watching sunlight slowly crawl across the black lacquer surface. It looked too real, too sudden, like a dream snuck past the door. The doorbell rang again. This time, it wasn't a delivery. It was her. Donna stood in the hallway, clutching a paper bag in one hand. Her hair was pulled back, lips bare, eyes ringed from a night of no sleep. She looked older than he remembered. Not in the way age creeps in the way truth does. I brought breakfast, she said softly. Figured you haven't eaten, he said nothing. She held up the bag slightly, then lowered it again. Can I come in? Louis stepped back, just enough to let the door swing open. She walked in slowly, eyes scanning the room until they landed on the piano. I guess Marcus told you. He nodded once. She placed the bag on the counter, then turned to face him. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles pale. I thought I'd feel better seeing it again, she said. I don't. Louis kept his distance. I know you don't owe me anything. Not a conversation. Not this moment. But I need to say it. He folded his arms. Then say it. Donna blinked, like she hadn't expected him to speak. She took a breath. I sold that piano because I was scared. Not of money. Not of Joan needing help. I was scared of what it meant to support you. Because I didn't understand you. Not the way I understood her. Louis didn't move. His expression didn't change. You were always so quiet. So internal. I never knew what you were feeling unless it exploded. Joan wore everything on the surface. She made things easy. You made me uncertain. And I hated being uncertain. Looked at her finally. So you punished me for it. She didn't flinch. I did. I needed you. I know. I begged you. With every song, every recital, every missed dinner. Her eyes shimmered. I heard you. I just didn't. Listen. The words cracked something open between them. I thought if I ignored it long enough, she continued, you'd give up. I thought maybe you'd find something practical, safe, something that didn't scare me. But then you didn't. You just kept playing. Quietly. Away from me. I had to, Louis said, voice low. It was either that or lose myself completely. Donna stepped closer, slow and tentative. I kept that receipt because part of me knew I'd done something unforgivable. But I wasn't ready to face it. Not until I saw you on that stage. Louis' jaw clenched. You didn't even come backstage. I couldn't. You mean you wouldn't? No, she said, tears now rising. I mean I couldn't, because I didn't know how to look you in the eye after watching you give the world something. I tried to kill. You looked like your father sitting there, completely lost in the music, and it broke me. Louis's voice tightened. You always said I wasn't like him. I said that because I hated how much you were. Silence surged between them. He loved me too much, she whispered. He gave everything to us, and when he got sick, he still tried to smile through it. And when he died, I shut off. I didn't know how to love the quiet anymore. It reminded me too much of what I lost. Louis's heart twisted. I know none of this excuses what I did, she said. It doesn't undo the years I wasn't there. But I came today to give you this. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Louis stared. She opened it. Inside was a tiny gold pin, shaped like a treble clef. The same one his father used to wear on his jacket at every recital. The same one Louis had asked about when he was 8, and she had told him it was lost. I kept it, she said. All this time. She extended it to him, her hand trembling. He would have wanted you to have it. I know I should have given it sooner. Louis took it slowly, fingers closing around the box like it might vanish. He looked at her, really looked at her. For a moment, she wasn't Donna the cold mother. She was just a woman, flawed, regretful, trying too late. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, she said, voice cracking. But I'm asking you to let me keep watching. To come to the next performance, even if I sit in the last row, even if you never speak to me again. He didn't answer right away. He turned, walked to the piano and opened the lid. Pressed one key, then another, then played a phrase from the recital, just the closing line, the goodbye, the letting go. When the sound faded, he turned back to her. Next time, he said quietly, sit in the front. She sobbed once, covering her mouth. He didn't hug her, but he didn't close the door either. Louis sat by the window 3 days after the confrontation. The treble clef pin lay beside his notebook, the metal catching the light like it was trying to whisper something. He hadn't touched the piano that day, not because he couldn't, but because for the first time in years he didn't have to prove he was still worthy of it. There was peace in that. Donna hadn't called. She hadn't dropped by again. But she'd sent something instead, a handwritten letter. I won't make you relive my mistakes by speaking them again. I just want you to know I see you now. Not the son I wanted or feared or misjudged, but the man you became in spite of me. I'm proud. And I'm ashamed that it took so long to say so. I will be in the front row. You don't need to save me a seat. I'll be there anyway. He didn't cry. He just folded it neatly and placed it. Next to the pin, Joan came by the next morning. No makeup, hoodie oversized, her hair pulled up like she hadn't slept. I need to tell you something, she said, walking straight in. Louis leaned against the wall, arms folded. I knew about the piano, she admitted. She told me the day she sold it. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I told her not to. I begged her, said we'd figure out another way to get me to nationals. But she looked me in the eyes and said, your dream matters more right now. Joan swallowed hard, and I said nothing after that, because it felt good. For once, it felt good to be the one she'd move the world for. And I hate that. Louis stayed silent. I didn't just take your piano, Louis. I took your voice. And I knew it. He finally spoke. Why tell me now? Because I couldn't sleep after watching you perform. I realized something. That maybe I was never the favorite. Maybe I was just the one who didn't make her feel small. He didn't expect her to say that. Joan's voice cracked. You know what hurt most? Watching you glow under those lights. And realizing you never needed her approval. You just wanted someone to care enough to stay. You would have given that piano up yourself if she'd asked. With love. Louis nodded slowly. Yeah, I would have. Joan dug into her bag and pulled out a check. It's everything I earned from my last 3 endorsements. You deserve it. For school, for touring, for whatever. I owe you more than I can pay. He looked at the number. It was significant, but not life-changing. Still, he took it. Because her giving it mattered more than the amount. Joan started to turn away, but paused. You're better than me. No, Louis said quietly. Just different. And finally unafraid. The next concert came faster than expected. A national showcase, industry people, sponsors, record labels, big stage, bigger stakes. Louis sat at the grand piano center stage, this time under a single spotlight. But he wasn't alone. Front row, Donna, wearing his father's old navy blazer. Her hands folded, jaw trembling, but eyes focused. No phone, no forced smile, just watching, beside her, Joan, clapping before a note had even been played. The house lights dimmed. Louis closed his eyes. He didn't play a competition piece. Not the one everyone expected. He played his piece. The one he wrote at the church. The one he built from dust and silence and broken chords. The one he finished days ago, in a room full of memory and forgiveness. It told his story. Every press of a key spoke of being overlooked. Every rising crescendo showed the fight he'd clawed his way through. The climax, furious, breathtaking, carried all the rage and defiance he'd once swallowed just to survive. And the final refrain? It whispered something only the broken ever truly understood. I forgive you, but I will never forget. As the last note faded, Louis opened his eyes. They were on their feet. Every seat. But he didn't smile for them. His eyes met Donna's, and for the first time she looked small in the best way. Humbled. Human. Her hands trembled as they clapped, and her face crumpled with every beat. Behind her, a figure emerged. Richard Sterling, his old boss. Still rich. Still smug. Still thinking he could win Louis over. He approached backstage later, offering a polished grin. Louis, that was remarkable. We'd love to get you on board at Sterling Sound. Full creative control, a team of arrangers, a generous signing bonus. Let's talk numbers. Louis didn't blink. You fired me without a word when my life fell apart, he said calmly. You never once asked if I needed help. Richard shifted. That was a different time, different leadership. I see your potential now. Louis smiled coldly. I already have a label. Which one? He pointed down the hallway. Arthur. Kensington walked out of the wings, slow and confident. I'll be working under Apex Music. Division of Apex Global, Louis said. They believed in me when no one else returned my calls. Richard paled. You're making a mistake. No, Louis said. You made yours years ago. You don't get a second audition. He turned away. That night, Louis returned home. The piano waited in the corner, gleaming in the moonlight. He sat down, rested his fingers gently on the keys. He didn't play. He just breathed, because he didn't need to fight anymore. Not for love, not for space, not for the right to be heard. His enemies weren't shouting now, they were silent, powerless, even Donna. She didn't need to be punished. She needed to watch him rise without her. That was the revenge, and it was complete. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the treble clef pin, and pinned it to his shirt. He smiled. Quiet, calm, unshaken. Not for them, for himself.